out.
Yeah, well, yeah, this is something I talk about a lot with Donald Trump because back in 2016, Trump got 81% of the white evangelical vote, and in 2020 he got, I think, 75 or 76% of the white evangelical vote. So when you talk to, like, you see a lot of them online posting how Trump is great and he's awesome. You talk to them one on one, you're like, okay, square this circle for me, because like my entire life I've heard you guys talk about how important it is that we have a leader who's a man of character, someone who actually, even if they don't believe in God, that they have biblical principles because that will guide the nation. And why do we, throw that to the side all of a sudden? Like, oh, well, they go with the King David example because King David was a piece of shit, and they love the King David example and everything. And it's like, no, shut the fuck up. David was a competent politician and military commander. You cannot say that shit about Donald Trump. And it's just, people were surprised. Like, outsiders are like, I can't believe all these, white evangelicals just abandoned their principles and went for Trump. It didn't surprise me at all because Trump reminds me a lot of several preachers that I met as a Christian evangelical. Like, his temperament is very similar to these folks.
Yeah, and I mean, you touched on it earlier, but I think, I don't know if I'm going to be able to phrase this right, but there's a little bit of shame that I think that these people have about a lot of their bigoted ideas. And then there are some groups where, like, they don't care. They'll be openly homophobic. They'll be openly sexist. But I think that at least a lot of the spaces and a lot of the racism that I was privy to, they were a little bit ashamed of it. So that a lot of that would happen in mostly like white spaces. So I was not surprised at all when all of these fucking white Christian folk rallied around Trump, because I hear what they say behind closed doors, and I would hear, how they talked about their neighbors, right? The people that Jesus called them to love. What did you describe it? What did your friend describe it as?
A civic religion.
A civic religion. And so, no, it was not shocking. And I remember I was 2016 was when Trump got elected. I was a teenager, and like, I wasn't old enough to vote. I was like, he's going to win. Like, I remember like thinking then, because I was still in those spaces and the majority of people I knew were going to vote for him. It did not matter what, and it still does not matter. That
no, it doesn't. Convicted. It still doesn't.
It doesn't. And it didn't matter then that he had been found of guilty and accused of all sorts of terrible things. Like, because he allowed them this sort of open avenue to finding more bigoted people like them and being able to do it out loud and with acceptance. Instead of having to be ashamed of how they
Trump mainstreamed, euphemism-free bigotry. That's what Trump mainstreamed. Because, like, in the past, the bigotry was still there, but it was, couched behind, these phrases that this miasma, you had to kind of decipher what they meant by it. And Trump is like, well, rather, smartly said, okay, well, why bother with that? Just say it out loud. And other politicians are afraid to do that. And Trump said, no, I'm going to do it. And it worked. And it's not just that they like him. They like him more. Think about the popular, even before the January 6th thing, compare the popularity of Mike Pence to Donald Trump. Mike Pence is ostensibly everything these people say they actually care about. Like, he represents all of their beliefs, all of their values. And, Trump doesn't, I don't even think Trump believes in God. I don't believe for a second that Trump believes in God. I always joke that it's ironic that, we got our first atheist president, and it's Donald fucking Trump, of all people. It's pretty funny. But, what I have found very interesting about this is the fact that politically what they're doing makes sense. It does. If someone, let's say there was a candidate X, and he believed everything I believed when it came, or he supported every policy I wanted, but he was a piece of shit. He was a horrible human being. He was a disgrace. But if he's backing everything I want, okay, all right, I'm still voting for him. Like, I tell you, like, I am, because, like, I'm actually going to get now what I want. And so that's the way they're looking at it. They're looking at it for a practical political sense, which makes sense. However, what's more important to them, supposedly, is their faith and their religion and bringing people closer to God. And on that sense, it is suicide. Like, they have pretty much destroyed their entire movement, because the world saw that their beliefs are incredibly hollow. They're vapid. They don't mean anything. And they will sell them out in a fucking second if it means that they can grant themselves political power. We saw it, they saw it, and most importantly, their children saw it because their kids are, they're however old they are, 10, 11, 15, 16. They're like, okay, so this stuff doesn't really matter to you. And they're already, finding out more and more about, the nature of reality and everything with the internet, that the religion is going to, or that sect of the religion is going to evaporate with the next generation. They've guaranteed that, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, I think that we're at a little bit of a weird point in history where that is absolutely true, right? We're at the age where we were seeing our parents grow up, sort of forcing us, teaching us all of these good values, and then not practicing what they preach when it comes to electing these people into office. But we're at an interesting point in history where I think we're going to see a big rise in the what's the word? People who are going into cults, and whether or not Christianity turns into something like that, more of like a cult maybe. But I think that that is why a lot of people do still go to church. Capitalism has stripped us of all of our third spaces, except for churches, right?
Yeah.
And people are finding it increasingly more difficult to live without community support. I think are going to be looking for community support and are going to be met with cults. So,
yeah. And see, that's something that unfortunately churches still remain fairly important in American culture, not so much in Western European culture. They've kind of dwindled. Say what?
That's what I've heard. Yeah,
they've kind of dwindled away. But the United States it's still going pretty strong. But then again, there's stronger social safety nets in Western Europe. So the whole, and there's walkable cities and universal education. So the community aspect is still alive and well, or at least better than ours. And so people are just grasping for that. And that's something you mentioned earlier, how religion is kind of innate in human biology. It seems to me it does make sense. It makes a lot of sense. Although it's nonsense, but we're communal animals, and individually humans are not impressive at all. There's not a whole lot we can do. We're not particularly fast or strong. Sure, we're pretty smart, but that only gets you so far. But working in groups, we can literally go to the moon. I mean, like we're amazing. We sell ourselves short a lot of times talking shit about human beings, but we are a goddamn impressive species. And it's the teamwork element that's important. And so if you put yourselves in the mind of, your average human being 200,000 years ago, just trying to survive on the African savannah, and when your group of 150, 200 people, whatever, these people, you're related to most of them, you get along, you trust them. You run across another group, you have no idea if they're trustworthy or not. No clue. Like, you don't know if they're out marauding, you know if they're going to steal your supplies. You have no idea. And so, because you have no common bond. But, you talk to them and they say, oh, we worship the moon god. Like, oh my God, I worship the moon god too. Now you've got a bond. Now you've got something, that connects you when otherwise you wouldn't. And then you work together. And so the people who didn't have that, that inclination to trust people that, believed in this, this fairy tale, were more likely to die. And we're the result, we're the progeny of the people who thought, working together for a fairy tale made sense. And so to me, it does make sense that way.
It does. No, it absolutely does. And you see that across various.
Yeah, you do.
Every culture throughout.
You do. Yeah. It's not so.